The air show business is something that you don't reach the pinnacle and learn everything you need to know by the time you fly the first air show. As a matter of fact, I would say you're learning about the air show business the whole time that you're on the team. I wanted to be in aviation, I think, all my life. My father was in the Army Air Corps. He was a mechanic in the Army Air Corps. And so he had a love of airplanes. And because of that, at a very young age, I think he just inculcated that in me as well. It was on my senior year in college that the Navy recruiter came by. And I had a preference for the Navy anyway because I think I always wanted the challenge of flying off of aircraft carriers. I took engineering in college, so it was fairly easy for me to take the aptitude tests that the Navy gave out. And even though I graduated that year and started working at General Electric a little bit later on, I went down to the old Brooklyn Naval Air Station. That's where I enlisted in the Navy. Once we got our wings, you were assigned the fleet aircraft that you were going to fly. And I actually chose A6s out of flight training and got A6s. I flew 181 missions in Vietnam. We didn't fly the last combat mission until January of '73. One of my squadron mates was Dick Schramm. Dick is the one that actually got me interested in the Blue Angels because Dick was the PAO and I think events coordinator on the team 69, 70, 71. Dick was an encyclopedia of aviation knowledge and everything, and so all of us junior officers really enjoyed talking with him. And he was a great guy, and he's the one that actually got me interested in applying for the team. I was selected in 1975. I reported to the team in October that year. And after reporting to the team soon after that, they told me that I was going to be training as number 6, the opposing solo. And of course, just being selected on the team, you know, you're over the moon and you're very excited and honored to be selected. But if I could have chosen any position I wanted to fly, it would have been that position. When I was selected, Denny Sapp, who was number 6 in 1975, became the lead solo, so he trained me. And the very first thing that Denny did was he gave me a packet of accident reports. And he said, I want you to read these accident reports because if there's somebody that is going to hurt themselves or be killed, it's probably going to be you, number 6. So I want you to be very mindful and listen to me and everything that I tell you to do. And he got my attention, and it was a good way to get started. The first season, 76, was, I will say that was probably the most fun that I had. And the reason why I'm saying that is because as opposing solo, the lead solo is pretty much responsible for everything. And therefore, if something went a little bit amiss, normally the lead solo was the person that was blamed for it. And I can remember in one specific case, we were doing a show in Roosevelt Roads, Puerto Rico. And as number 6, the first thing that you did on takeoff was the low transition, clean roll, and then pull up and do a half Cuban 8. And I came back after the air show, and I had a little bit of a tree branch or a little bit of a pine smell in one of my landing gear doors. So the maintenance officer comes over and says, hey, you know, Johnny's got some, tree limbs or something or in his landing gear door. Denny, you're flying too low. no, well, it wasn't Denny's fault at all. It was my fault. I'm the one who did it, but he got blamed for it. So, you know, it was just one of those little anecdotal things that happened during the year, but, you know, I thought it was fairly amusing. After the 1976 season, it's time for the lead solo to leave the team, and then the posing solo then ramps up and becomes a lead solo to then train the new solo pilot who's going to take number 6. Well, Nile Kraft was selected the same year I was selected, so we were both selected at the end of '75 and came onto the team. I had a very good rapport with Nile, and that's important to have a good rapport when there are just two of you working together. So he wanted to become opposing solo, and I said, sure, I'd be great to have you as opposing solo. And you know, we started working on the season. There's one maneuver that the Diamond did that, I mean, I can remember the first time I saw it back when I was NAS Oceania, when the Blues came there to fly a show in F4s, was the line abreast loop. And the line abreast loop, of course, you're looking 90 degrees from where the airplane is pointed, and you know, and you're trying to fly, you know, perfect formation and do this loop. And the Diamond used to always complain that that was their hardest maneuver. So in the beginning of 1977, when we went out to practice, I would have Nile fly a loop, and I would practice flying on his wing, flying line abreast, to say, hey, you know, is it possible for a solo pilot who doesn't fly as much formation, is it possible for a solo pilot to do this well enough so that we can make this an airshow maneuver? And as it turned out, you know, I practiced it, and I said, I think this is very workable. So in 1977, we added the 5th airplane to the line abreast loop. It wasn't a harder maneuver, and adding one airplane made it look like there were a lot more airplanes in the maneuver. The training was going well for 1977. We were supposed to do our first over-the-field practice. So the two solos doing all the opposing maneuvers, we'd gotten that down. We were going to do the over-the-field practice. And on the taxi out, something broke in Nile's jet, and he couldn't do it. So I did a single solo practice over the field. And after that over-the-field practice, I needed to fly back to DFW to meet with the Southwest Regional Manager of the FAA, because we were trying to put together the air show in Dallas-Fort Worth. So it was a long day, because we had done the over-the-field practice, flew back to DFW, and on my arrival back, it was dusk. It was not completely dark, but it was just getting dark. And as I got out of the jet, the boss, Casey Jones, was there to meet me, and he was still in his flight suit, which was extremely odd. So I said, what's the boss doing out here meeting me? And of course I got down out of the aircraft, and he said that Nile was killed that day. And of course the first thing going through my mind was, well, what did I say? What didn't I say? What could I have done, you know, to perhaps prevent this? Anyway, a real terrible accident, terrible for all of us on the team. And then we were about 3 weeks away from our first scheduled show. So we went through the what ifs of what we could do, and it boiled down to there was one option, and that was having Vance Parker, who was on the team the year prior as the lead solo, have him come back. So, and I offered him, I said, look, Vance, if you want to be lead solo again, you can be lead solo, I'll be opposing solo. I just wanted to have the dual solo show. So Vance came back to the team, and he was very nice. He said, no, this is your turn to be lead solo. I'll be opposing solo. And he was a just an outstanding aviator, and within 3 weeks, I mean, we went out there and it took us about a week to get the solo routine down, and then we put it all together and put the Delta together, and we opened the season on schedule.
Flying Blue Angel number 5, the lead solo pilot in his second year from Lynnfield, Massachusetts, Lieutenant John Miller.
Yeah, obviously 77 got out to about the worst start that we possibly could, but the team gelled, came together very well, and I think it was a very good year for air shows for us, because we had a second-year boss. Casey Jones was in his second year, and then having Vance come back with all the experience that he had, we had a really high success rate of making really good opposing hits and flying the air shows. So one thing that we all did on the team is we were all striving to fly the perfect air show. Now, I will say sometimes, you know, it's kind of like the asymptotic curve. You're getting closer and closer and closer to it, but you never quite get there. But there were some times where we got very close to flying the perfect air show. The problem that the team faced at the end of '77 was I was supposed to leave the team, get orders elsewhere, but Vance needed to get back to Miramar and his fleet squadron. So with that happening, the question was, well, okay, who is going to train a new solo pilot in 1978? So shortly after, I think or maybe before the show season ended, Boss Jones called me into his office and asked me if I would be willing to extend for a third year.
Flying Blue Angel number 5, the solo pilot, in his third year with the team, from Lynnfield, Massachusetts, Lieutenant Commander John Miller.
Bill Newman came on board as the new boss, and winter training, I think, went pretty well. Of course, and I will say this, that I think that winter training is always a little bit more difficult with a new boss, because, I mean, that is the most important position on the team, because the boss sets everything, flies all of the maneuvers, communicates with the wingman, and how he does that and how well he's able to do it really has a tremendous marker on the success of the team. As the season goes along, also, this was my first year to nurture the opposing solo pilot along. So as you get further and further into the year, you want to look at it in the context, okay, this person's going to be the lead solo next year. You know, I want them, you know, to understand and be able to do things properly and be able to nurture and bring along the opposing solo pilot.
Flying Blue Angel number 6, the opposing solo pilot, from Lanham, Maryland, Lieutenant Mike Curtin.
Mike Curtin and I had a very good relationship. You know, we spent time together, you know, even away from the show sites and when we were back in Pensacola. So he was a great guy. He was a friend of mine, even aside from everything else that we did and all the times that we were together and worked together on the team. We had finished a very successful show. We had a great show up at Point Mugu, and we were going to fly down to Miramar to do arrival maneuvers. And for some reason, the night before, I got some sort of a bug, and I mean, I had a fever, and I was not feeling well at all. And we, in the brief, you know, we briefed the fact that probably Mike was going to have to do single solo arrival maneuvers, because I told him, I says, unless something changes very soon, I'm not well enough to be pulling G's or doing anything else in the airplane. As a matter of fact, it was hard for me just to climb up the ladder and get in the airplane. we briefed standard arrival maneuvers. You know, I talked specifically to Mike about his responsibility to set all the altitudes for all the maneuvers, because obviously didn't have the lead solo to set his maneuvers on. It was the afternoon, and when it came to horizontal rolls, he was doing it pointing west. And at that time of year, as the sun sets out there, there's a little bit of haziness. Well, anyway, Mike tried to do 5, and I think he had a drop tank on the airplane, which might have affected the roll rate just a little bit, plus the haziness that when he finished the 5th roll, he actually got upright, but he had set up a significant sink rate and, you know, hit the runway. So I was orbiting right behind the crowd when this happened, and so of course you could look down and you see the whole thing, and it was almost a surreal moment watching that. It was a very tough time, and you know, losing 2 opposing solo pilots was really hard to swallow. It was very difficult, but you know, it happened, and you know, there's no going back. There's no changing it, or you know, there's just nothing you can do. You just have to live with it. You know, I was obviously very privileged to be selected. I worked very hard at my craft while I was there, but there was always an understanding that, you know, I was selected, but there could have been any number of other people selected for the position. So doing that job was a privilege. And you just do it to the best of the ability, and you're there to really represent the Navy, represent naval aviation and the people that came before you, and hopefully to inspire young people who watch the show to want to become a part of it in the future. I'm very heartened by the fact that the team is, now in its 73rd year and going strong, and it's a great ambassador. It's a great ambassador for the Navy, for naval aviation. And so I look at it as my time on the team as being a part of that, as part of being part of the team, and as a continuation, and trying to do it well. And once you leave the team, it's time for other naval aviators to step into those positions and continue on the tradition that's been, you know, has been maintained through the years.